Chapter 39. Coughing, battered and bruised, Pike shifted beneath the debris that covered him. Rocks and snow slid off him, and he managed with effort to get his head and shoulders above the rubble. His hearing was thick, like had cotton in his ears, and blood swept down the side of his face. Snow had fallen inside of his blouse, chilling him and turning it to water within seconds. He fisted the shotgun and brought it up with him. He didn't know how many of the tangos were still alive, or if they'd weathered the blast any better than he did. Bracing the shotgun on its butt, he used the weapon to leverage himself to his feet. Dust and powdered snow drifted over the valley. Dead men lay strewn across the countryside. Some of them were the tangos the Marines had killed to take the valley, but many of them were Marines. Incredulous, Pike gazed out at the damage. Jakob had set up the valley as a kill box, but the kill box was far more dangerous than Pike had surmised. Much of the architecture of the surrounding mountainside had changed. Landslides covered the valley in several places. Pain throbbed through Pike's head. He couldn't quite connect with himself. How many of those dead Marines had he fought with and eaten with? How many of them did he know? Page 262. Then his mind snapped back to him, and he remembered he had been with Becca. Fear stabbed him in prickling bursts, somehow penetrating the days that followed him to overflowing. Pike looked around, searching for Becca and Zeke and Cho. Only snow and rock and rubble met his gaze. In the distance, other Marines began searching for teammates as well. Corpsman! The cry was ragged and barely snaked through Pike's muffling hearing. Corpsman! Horseman! Dropping to his knees, Pike tried to remember where everyone had been when he'd come out of the cave. Suddenly, the area in front of him heaved, creating a molehill. Abandoning the shotgun, Pike dug into the snow and rock, scooping it away with his hands, bruising his fingers in the process. Within seconds, he'd found Becca and started clearing away the rubble covering her. She came up wheezing and hacking. Her left eye was nearly swollen shut, and a large knot had formed along her eyebrow. She had her M4A1 in her hand, covering her mouth with her elbow. She coughed several times and studied the nearby ground. Zeke and Cho! Pike shook his head. They were right here. They've got to be under here somewhere. Becca started digging, clawing at the earth. Renewing his efforts, Pike dug too. Cho should have been to his right. That was the best that he could recall. Here, Becca kept digging, revealing the boot she'd found. Pike joined her. Together they uncovered Zeke. The young man was unconscious but breathing. They left him on the ground and continued to hunt for Cho. A few minutes later, Pike found Cho's hand. He had to move out 5 feet from where he had expected to find Cho. Either of the men had tried to throw himself out further, or he had been propelled by the blast. Cho's hands was loose, unresponsive as Pike pulled on it. Working quickly, Pike uncovered the man. Cho had been lying on his back. When they had his head clear, Pike knew at once they'd gotten to him too late. Dirt filled Cho's eyes, but Pike could see that the man's pupils were dilated in death. More dirt filled his mouth. Becca yanked on Cho. Help me, Pike, help me. We've got to get CPR started. She kept fighting, struggling to get Cho free. Becca, feeling hollowed out, like he'd been gutted, Pike caught Becca's hand and tried to calm her. She was still half out of it herself, her coordination not quite back to normal. Becca! She fought against him, yanking and shoving. Stop, let me go. We can help him. No, Pike kept his voice gentle. We can't. We just need to start CPR. Get him breathing again. Becca tried to pull away. Becca, it's too late. It's too late. Pike held her hands in his. He's gone. Becca looked down, took a deep breath. All right. She wiped her face on her forearm, then got to her feet. Let's go see if anyone else needs help. The secondary team of Marines had arrived in the valley just in time to get caught up in the blast. They'd missed out on the gunfight and then lost 9 men in the suicidal ambush. Pike's team had lost 17 Marines, almost half. 3 had been killed during the brief battle, and 9 had lost their lives in the explosions and the ensuing avalanches. 5 were still MIA, presumed buried in the debris or in the caves that had collapsed. Pike helped pack the dead into body bags. He knelt staring into the open bag that contained Johnny Cho. For a moment, as he gazed at the man, it wasn't Cho, it was Petey. and Pike felt like he was losing his best friend all over again. That was the problem with caring about people outside of his own skin. He couldn't protect them, couldn't be there for them the whole time, just like he hadn't been able to be there for Petey. Cho and those other Marines had slipped right through Pike's fingers. Pike, someone laid a hand on Pike's shoulder. Pike swung around, pushing himself to his feet and bringing the 870 around, swinging the weapon for the man's head. Gunny Towers caught the shotgun barrel in one big hand and halted it inches from his face. Towers stared into Pike's face. You okay, Marine? Yeah. Pike pulled his weapon away from Towers. I'm peachy. He turned back to Cho and zipped the bag, trying hard not to think about Petey and Cho and Hector. But all of them were mixed up in there, and it was difficult to think of nothing at all when he was carrying dead men. Let me give you a hand. Towers stepped in beside Pike. I can get it. I can help you. Pike surrendered and stood there. Towers searched Pike's face. Who'd you lose, Marine? Who are you thinking about while you were looking at this man? Pike didn't speak. Because I know you're thinking about somebody. I seen that look before. Saw the day you were cleaning them people up out of the street. So now, right this minute, you and me are gonna talk. There's plenty of other people for you to bother, Gunny. I expect I'll get around to bothering them soon enough. Got a lot of grief heaped on us today, and we still got to secure this area so the CIA can go through everything, see what they can find out. Towers locked eyes on Pike. So, you tell me who's weighing so heavy on your mind. Pike considered refusing, using language graphic enough to land him back in the brig. But the old pain from Petey's death, the fresh pain from Cho's death, and the fear of what might happen to Hector swelled up like a balloon in him and felt like it was going to burst. Had a friend. We came up together in foster homes, just the two of us, you know. Had each other's backs, Towers nodded. Yeah, always. Just me and Petey. We took care of each other the best we could. When we got the chance, we cut and ran. Then it was just him and me out in the streets. Pike stared into Towers' eyes, but he didn't really see the man. He was back in the past. We did things we shouldn't have. We did everything we shouldn't have. Gunny, we were hunted by bad people, and we were no friends to law enforcement. Towers didn't say anything, just listened. Petey took chances. He always pushed his situation, always figured he had an angle, always figured he was smarter than everybody else. Till one day, he found out he wasn't. Pike nodded. Yeah, guys went up against, killed him. I wasn't there. He didn't tell me he was going, just lit out on his own. By the time I found out about it, it was too late. I got to him just in time to watch him die. You're still carrying that hurt around with you. Pike's voice got tight, and he had to force the words out. It won't go away. Never lost nobody close to you before. Never had nobody close to me. Towers was quiet for a minute. You're gonna lose people every now and again, Pike. That's how life is. Ain't nobody forever. And it hurts because it's supposed to. The pain reminds you how much you love them. Blinking his eyes, Pike had to look away. I'm not gonna feel like that, Gunny. Kinda hard to decide that. Not so hard. All I need to do is go back to living life the way I used to. Just be you, huh? Yeah. You can't do that. Maybe, but it would be a hard thing to do. And in my opinion, the life you live would be a lot harder than what you're trying to get away from. God put us on this earth to take care of each other. Made it so we can care about each other, so we ain't alone. And that means sometimes losing somebody's gonna hurt, because that's just how it is. Pike didn't say anything. You think about that some, Pike, before you start walling yourself off from people. You think about what you'd be giving up. You ask me, that pain just makes having them people in your lives worth even more. I don't see it that way. I see you don't, and I think that's a shame. Towers wiped his face with his hand. Sorry about your friend. The one you lost, and then the one you lost today. He glanced at the body bag that contained Cho. Come on, I'll give you a hand. Together they bent and picked up Cho's body. Try not to dwell on the dead Marines who littered the snow-covered battleground. Heath tramped through the area again, picturing it in his mind the way it had been before the attack and the way it was now. It skittered a mortar crater that had blown black earth over the pristine whiteness, and headed into one of the caves his scouts had discovered. That man's report about his findings had intrigued Heath. The cave was small and deep. Hay covered the floor, and animal dung spotted in places. He knelt beside a pile of it and waved to Becca, who was overseeing more investigation nearby. She trotted over, breath fogging out in patches before her. Something wrong? Heath pointed at the pile of dung. Do you know what that is? Becca frowned in confusion and answered without getting any closer. You can stand off a ways from it and you know what it is. You don't have to be right on top of it. Yeah, I got that. But where'd it come from? The other end of the animal than the one you feed. This isn't hard. He shook his head. Not the point. What animal would you say this came from? Big apples like that? Probably a horse. A cow would have left a pie behind. The sheep would have be small pellets. And goats? Pellets. Same as a sheep or a rabbit. Granny calls them goat berries. Heath ran his hand over his chin, knowing something was wrong. They had goats up here. We found some of those in the caves, along with a few chickens, but I haven't seen any horses. Becca's gaze grew more interested. They don't care for horses much up in the mountains. Caravans through here use donkeys. That's what I was thinking. Kneeling, Becca used a strand of straw to push the poop around. This is fairly fresh. Hasn't been here long. With the altitude and the cold, it'd be either dehydrated or frozen. It's neither. She tossed the straw away and stood. This reminds me of the old joke, the one about the little girl who got a box of horse poop for her birthday and kept digging around inside because she was sure that there was a pony in there somewhere. He stood as well, surveying the cave and the animal spoor. There were a lot of donkeys in here at one time, so where are they now? He looked at Becca and shook his head. Jakob's not here. We're wasting our time trying to find him. We haven't cleared out all the caves. We don't know that. He shook his head and strode from the cave. I know that. Jakob drew us in here, gave his father one last chance to play the unconquerable hero and become a martyr for the cause, and hoped to kill as many of us as he could. He's thinking we're going to spend our time focused on this place, looking for a body we'll never find to confirm the kill, while he's off doing what? Becca gave the question more serious thought. Jakob's not just going to slink away. The guy's not wired like that. If he didn't have something better to do, he would have stayed here and died with his father. Jakob wasn't planning on dying, not for his father. At last hurrah. This is for his father, a last hurrah. Jakob's after something, and he wanted us focused on elsewhere. He thought furiously and then locked on to a thought that had shaken him. There's a flight coming in today. The Joint Chiefs are arriving for a meet and greet. He took off at a near run, heading for Gunny Towers, standing tall on a hill overlooking the mountainside. Gunny! Towers left his post and came over at once. Yes, sir. Get the men up and ready to move out. We're leaving in 5 minutes. Going where? Back to Kandahar. That's where we'll find Yakwa. Towers frowned. You sure about that, sir? He pointed back to the small cave. You get the men ready. I'm going to square our departure with command. He glanced at his watch. If they heard, they might make it back to Kandahar before the Joint Chiefs arrived. If they didn't make it, he was certain it would be too late for a lot of things. If he was wrong, he was pushing a lot of tired Marines for no reason. But he was more afraid of arriving late than of being wrong. He was sure he wasn't wrong. Tired and aching from the rapid deployment following the mountain battle, Pike sat behind the wheel of the Humvee and pressed down hard on the accelerator. The Humvee raced along the two-lane highway. Behind him, the other Marine vehicles trailed in the tight formation. What do you think you're doing, bro? You're just heading back into your problems you're trying to get away from. Petey's voice had been nagging Pike the whole way down the mountain. Pike wished Petey would shut up and leave him alone. Let him think. But he knew that wasn't going to happen until he figured out what he was doing and why he was doing it. Thoughts and memories of hurt raged inside of Pike's skull. All of it threatened to break loose. He didn't know what would happen if those emotions threw off the shackles, so he kept a tight hold on all of it. He told himself he wasn't coming unraveled at the seams, but the truth was that he didn't know. The last few days of the Marines had been difficult, and the desperation to get out from under an emotional overload had become a fierce push inside of him. The Marine in the passenger seat had tried talking to Pike, asking what all the hustle was about, but Pike had shut the guy down. Not wanting to listen to him. It should have been Cho in that seat, but it wasn't, and Pike wasn't ready to deal with that either at the moment. After Heath had briefed the Marines, letting them know he was thinking about Yakov, doubling back to Kandahar, Pike had told Heath about the caravan he'd seen hours ago. The predators hadn't had any footage of the area at the time because they hadn't been looking for a feint. If that caravan had been Yakov and his warriors, they were hours ahead of the Marines. Doesn't matter how long Yakov's been in Kandahar. The plane with the Joint Chiefs isn't going to land till it lands. There's time to get there and do something about this. Pike kept telling himself that. Command had listened to his theory, and they'd agreed that they were going to bulk up the security details around the airfield, but the arrival was going as planned. If the United States military backed off, the retreat would be seen as a loss of conviction and weakness. People would stop believing in the help that was supposed to be there. And after all the losses incurred from Yakov's troops in the city, the supplies were needed. Pike put his foot down harder on the accelerator. When they reached the straight stretch, the distance, he could see the outskirts of Kandahar. He knew that Yakov would be somewhere around the airport if the Joint Chiefs were his target. But finding the terrorist leader was going to be like looking for a needle in a haystack again. Heads up, Marines. Heath called over the radio. Command says the Tangos have launched attacks on military units and buildings inside Kandahar. We're going to be entering a battle zone. Pike peered through the Humvee's dirty windshield. The Kandahar airport lay 10 miles southeast of the city proper. The military would be deployed all over the airfield. The terminal's main building looked like a row of interconnected M's. Glass filled the curved space. Humvees and Marines were in position all around the airstrip. They were stretched thin, trying to hold the airport and city. Everything in Kandahar had turned to chaos. In the distance, in the direction of the city, dark smudges left bruises in the sky. Scanning the surrounding countryside, Pike noticed predators roaming the air. The drones were photographing the flat scupland around the airfield, relaying intel to the spotters in the country and oversight operation stateside. Pike felt certain no one could be hiding out there. So where was Yakov's attack coming from? What capabilities did the man have? Pike keyed the embidder. Heath, this is Pike. Yeah. Look, Yakov is not going to be here. If he was, the drones would have picked him up by now. When you've got them out looking for something, they don't miss much. Heath was quiet for a moment, and the silence almost frustrated Pike. Then Heath came back on. If you want to say something, say it. We know Yakov's been doing business with Russian arms dealers. I'm betting he's picked up something he can use from a distance. Even as he said it, Pike knew it was true, and his stomach turned sour. He's planning on hitting his target and walking away a winner. That's what this guy does. He's not fighting for a draw here. He's fighting for the brass ring. He wants to come back as a leader of terrorist forces. He can't do that if he's dead. And he can't do it if he doesn't make a big strike against us. If that's true, where are we going to find him? Hiding somewhere in plain sight. There's no way to know that. We've been tasked to help hold the airfield. Pike tried to stem back the anger that surged within him. Listen to me. We can't do anything here except maybe help pick up the pieces if this thing goes wrong. We need to get out in front of Yakov. His hesitation was a lot shorter this time. How do we do that? We find one of Captain Zarov's playmates and put the squeeze on him. Wherever Yakov is holed up, those turncoat Afghan National Police guys will know where he is. We don't know who those people are. No, but the Russians will. And they're not going to be feeling any too friendly towards them. That munitions dealer you picked up, Danica, he hasn't told you anything he knows. You can bet he's been holding the information back. Any gangster with common sense would. You got to have cred to leverage your way out of a situation. After a pause, he said, all right, let's chat up Danica. Pike glanced at his watch. The Joint Chiefs were still a ways out, but they were running out of time. How do I know I can trust you, Lieutenant Bridger? Handcuffed and wearing leg irons, Ilya Danica appeared at Heath through the smoky haze of his cigarette. He sat at a plain table in the interview rooms at the camp. He stared back at the man. He hadn't gone through channels to get the interview with Danica. He just ordered the man brought before him. You're not going to know until you walk through the door, a free man. Danica shrugged and took another hit off his cigarette. Then you see my dilemma. He squinted against the smoke he had expelled from it. For that matter, how do you know you can trust me? He thought back in the interviews he had watched his father conduct. Lionel Bridger had cut several corners to get his high-rolling criminal clients off in court, and he'd done it by railroading middlemen like Danica. The trick was to bait and switch, make them think they were giving up one thing when they were really giving up something entirely. We both want something, he said. I want to put an end to Zarof's network, shut it down once and for all. You want the men who betrayed you dead. Maybe dead is too harsh. Yakub is a good customer. Maybe the terrorists are good customers, but the Afghan National Police guys who have turned thieves are getting in the way of good business. He laid down images of Emil Estefeev lying on a stainless steel table. I read your jacket. Says you were a friend of Estefeev. Captain Zara put your friend on that table, shot him down in cold blood. Smoke drifted up Danika's cigarette. I have heard this. One of my Marines went after Zara because he killed Estefeev while he was in my Marine custody. That's why Zarov is dead. He'd let that sink in. What I'm offering besides your freedom is a chance for the Marine Corps to do what you would have liked to have done. You mean taking down Zarov's network? We don't know all of them. If we did, we would shut them down. That would create a vacuum in the power structure for a while, and we could consider that a win. I see. But you know others would come along to take Zara's place. For now, I'd be happy to take those guys off the board. He said, guys like you always exist because a market will always exist for your product. For the moment, though, all things will be equal. He shrugged. The way I see it, the munitions dealers will still have an edge. We'll look for you harder, maybe even stop you, a lot of you, but we can't stop you all. True. And for every munitions shipment we stop, the demand from others will increase, as will the profit margin. Danica smiled and smoked and smoked his cigarette again. You know crime very well. I do. He folded his arms across his chest. Do we have a deal or not? You should understand that I do not know everyone Zarov deals with among the Afghan National Police. I do know that there are, how do you Americans put it, bonuses. Bonuses works for me. Yes, bonuses. These are kicked up to Zarov's commanders as well, but I do not know them so much. I know some of the names of the police officers in the streets. I'll take that. Danica ground out his cigarette in the ashtray. Very well, we have a deal. He took out his iPad and stylus, giving the names. Anxiously seated in the passenger seat of the Humvee Gunny Towers drove, Heath watched his blue dots lit up on his iPad screen, overlaying the Kandahar street map. Towers focused on his driving, but he spared a glance every now and again as he drove. All those blue dots are Zarov's people. The ones Danica believes were on Zarov's payroll, and people who are thinking might be in cahoots with Yakub now. He glanced at Towers. Something you didn't understand, sir? Did you just say cahoots? It's a word. Towers looked defensive, firming his jaw as he swerved to dodge a stalled car that was on fire. Overhead, the M60 suddenly roared to life and chased back a group of tangos that had massed in an alley. I know it's a word. I've just never heard anyone say it before. Situation like that. What are we going to call it? Cahoots it is. And yeah, these blue dots are the ones that are supposed to be terror sympathizers and were known to congregate with Zara. Looks like a lot of them are congregating right now. That was true. Most of the Afghan National Police were equipped with U.S. military communications devices. Heath had negotiated a signaling ping on the suspected devices to reveal their locations. Hopefully, the tactic had paid off. They'd know soon. He checked the time. The planes were due to land in the next 12 minutes. Their own ETA was 11 minutes. They had a brief window to operate in, and there was no guarantee that Yakub would be anywhere near Zarov's people. It was a slim chance at best, but it was all they had. Rounding the corner and seeing the Afghan National Police jeep parked sideways in the street in front of an apartment building that Heath had designated, Pike ignored the brake and laid on the horn, not slowing his approach at all. He pulled his gas mask into place with his free hand. One of the policemen inside the vehicle got out and waved Pike to one side. Pike ignored the policeman, swerved hard to the left, and wove behind the parked car before the driver could react. Pike rode across the street and slammed on the brakes, bringing the Humvee to a rocking halt at the front door. Move it! Pike unclipped the 870 from his dashboard and threw the door open. He got out, joined by the other Marines assigned to his unit. 3 men whose lives were in the hands just the way Cho's had been. He pushed that thought away. Get the job done, Marine. Get out of there, buddy. This isn't your fight. You haven't done nothing at risk here. You don't got to prove nothing to nobody. Pike knew it wasn't about proving anything, and he did have something at risk here. However complicated it was, this was the life he had chosen. All of it. Surviving foster homes with Petey, deciding to get into the wilderness protection program, staying at the garage with Monty, and helping Hector with his map. All of those had been choices that had shaped him. Get out of my head, Petey. I gotta cut you loose. I did everything I could for you, but there were other people depending on me today. I'm not going to walk away from that. Pike tried to front the front door, but it was locked. Out on the street, more Humvees pulled into place. A loud hailer barked orders to the Afghan National Police. This is Lieutenant Heath Bridger of the United States Marine Corps. We're upholding the peacekeeping efforts. You men stand down and you will not be harmed. Put down your weapons and step away. Someone out there started firing, the M4A1 popping, but that was cut short by the full throttle roar of the M60 machine gun. Stepping back from the door, Pike waved his team to the side, then pulled the CS grenade from his ammo rack. He yanked the pin, held the spoon, and braced his shotgun, aiming at the door lock. When he pulled the trigger, the shotgun recoiled against his shoulder, and the locking mechanism fell into pieces. Pike rammed a boot against the door, knocking it open with a shuddering crack. Instead of going in, he tossed the grenade in underhanded as bullets pocketed the door and whizzed by him. Counting down, Pike stepped to the side of the door in front of a large plate glass window and waited as tear gas filled the room beyond. He peered inside. 3 men in street clothes fired Russian machine pistols at the door. One of them caught sight of Pike at the window and started turning. Pike aimed the shotgun and squeezed the trigger. The glass shattered as the double-aught buckshot tore through it. When the tight pattern of shot hit the target, the impact knocked him backward. Racking the slide without hesitation, Pike advanced, knocking glass out of his way with the shotgun barrel. As he strode into the foyer, more of the glass topped onto the helmet and shoulders. He ignored it and took aim again, never stopping, walking forward as he approached the tangos. The next shot caught another man and dropped him in his tracks, temporarily drowning out the rapid chatter of machine pistols. Swiveling, racking the slide again, Pike tried to pick up the third man, but the tango was in motion, plunging through the CS gas, disappearing into the white smoke. Pike locked on the stairwell and started up. Someone in the radio yelled, "I spotted the tangos. Visual confirmed. On Jakob, on the southeast corner, third floor. Could not get the shot. There are at least 4 other men inside that room. Close in," Heath said calmly. "Keep it tight. Let's shut them down." Pike fed extra shells into the shotgun as he ran up the stairwell. By the time he reached the first landing, eyes sweeping the stairs, the shotgun was fully loaded again. At the second floor landing, 2 tangos took up positions behind the railing and unlimbered their weapons. Bullets stitched the wall behind Pike. He didn't break stride, twisting to bring the shotgun to bear and squeezing out 3 rounds. One of the rounds missed the 2 men, going high and wide, but the next 2 were on target. Buckshot chewed through the flimsy railing and tore into the 2 tangos. One of the men fell backwards and sat down against the wall, unmoving. The other straightened and tried to run, but only succeeded in falling against the railing, dropping to the first floor and passing close enough so the Pike that he could have reached out and touched the tango. He fed more rounds into the shotgun, pushing himself forward and up, feeling the weight of his gear trying to hold him back. His calves and thighs burned from the effort of sprinting up the stairs. He turned the next landing and kept moving. Below, more gunshots sounded, letting him know that the second team to the apartment building had engaged the enemy as well. Pike reached the third floor landing, oriented himself in a heartbeat, and headed for the corner apartment.